Alright you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. So as you guys can see, this is the Q&A I've been talking about. And as always, there was a lot of good questions. But if I didn't get you on this one, I'll try to get you on the next one. I want to keep doing these on a regular basis. So you guys keep posting your questions on my community page. And remember, there's no dumb questions. The only dumb question is the one that isn't asked. Also, as I mentioned in the last post I posted, let me know what you guys think about this format I'm using. This is the old mat I used to use all the time when I first started this channel. So if you guys don't mind not seeing my ugly little face, this format saves me a lot of time and I should be able to get out a lot more content. So let's get to it. So Monroe818 wants to know, how is life for you now that you're no longer part of that lifestyle? So I'm definitely in a better place now, and like most of you, I live somewhat of a normal life. It's crazy when I think about it, but I've been out for almost 14 years now. And that in itself is an accomplishment, because from my early teens up until my mid-30s, I could never stay out longer than a month here or a month there. San Quentin was my first home. The streets was my vacation away from home. I'll be honest though, I don't miss that lifestyle, and I don't miss waking up in the morning wondering if I was gonna have to stab someone, if I was gonna get shot out on the yard, or if I was gonna fall victim to cutthroat politics. The only thing I remotely miss is the camaraderie and just being in the presence of a few brothers who I had gotten real tight with. That's the only thing I can say I miss. And even though in some sense I think it's a false sense of pride, I guess I also miss the prestige and the respect I used to get from other people because of who I was and what I represented. I mean, let's keep it real. It feels good to be able to say I'm active and I'm in good standings. But even that only has a limited amount of significance out here in the free world. Our kids don't care, our families and significant others don't care, and being active or in good standings has never got me a raise, paid my bills, or made any real difference out here in this free world. I'll close this part up by saying this. One of the biggest differences in my life today that I've come to show a great sense of appreciation for is just allowing myself to get out there and travel, see the real world, and enjoy different places that I've always wanted to go. Places like Cabo San Lucas, Hawaii, the Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, the Caribbean, Sandals Resort in St. Lucia, etc., etc. Man, I'm telling you guys, if you haven't been to some of these places, you need to put them on your bucket list. They're unbelievable. A lot of us that come from that lifestyle have never even been outside of California. We keep ourselves trapped in a little dark corner of the world, and we never allow ourselves to get out there and see the real world because we don't think about these things and they're not important to us. My values have definitely changed, and I look at the world different now. I guess some of it's part of growing up, but yeah, I'm in a better place in life, and at this point, I can't even imagine ever going back to prison. So John Doe 42 wants to know, what's your take on the YouTube Yarda?
Okay, strike up in the band.
You have a band?
Prepare to be blown away.
Blow me away.
Here we go. Look at this. Hey, it's nice to be home.
Honestly, I don't participate in all that. I don't knock those that do, and more power to them for what they do, but it just ain't my thing. YouTube's a trip though. Sometimes the bickering and the posturing between grown-ass men, some of the same ones that used to call themselves gangsters, gets to be too much, and at times, I even get embarrassed for them. But I guess low-budget entertainment's entertaining too. It all sells. In all actuality, it's kind of like that show Big Brother. People get in their feelings, they create alliances, and then they start going at each other. In some respects, it also kind of walks the line of cyber gangbanging. It's interesting to see some of the real characters that are out there though, because even though it's just this made up fairy tale game that some of these cats play, it still gives you a glimpse into the mentality and mindset that some of these individuals have. But I will say this, the one part of it that I fully support and stand fully behind is exposing the frauds. I'm all for that. The fakes, the liars, those that can't keep it real, and who have built their whole channel on deception are the ones who I can't stand myself. So even though channels like Bam Bam and Exposed 2 probably don't even feel channels like mine, that's okay. I completely understand it and I respect it, but I still support what they do and what their whole objective is, exposing the frauds and those individuals who are constantly self-reflecting, calling other people out their names and bashing on them for what they've done when they've actually done the same shit themselves. I'm telling you, some of these cats got the YouTube fever, but again, I don't involve myself in it, I'm not part of it, and it's just not my thing. Also, just to wrap this up, shout out to Chemo's Flicks for what he does. That's a channel that's been around for as long as mine, and he's still killing it. you got them shaking in their boots. They don't even want to be on YouTube anymore. So MB5VBH79 wants to know, if you're active, can you have a channel on YouTube? Absolutely. You can have a YouTube channel and be active. So don't assume that just because you see some of these cats on YouTube that they're in bad standings. But this brings up a few interesting thoughts that I was recently thinking about. But before I get into all that, let me just finish answering your question. Anybody can create a YouTube channel and become a content creator. But people start muddying the water when they start talking about things that active gang members shouldn't be talking about. Let's say you're a mechanic by trade, or you're an expert in a certain field, and you create videos showing people the tricks of the trade. That's cool and nobody would ever say anything about it. But if there's someone who starts talking about their experiences in prison and they start talking about politics, then that individual is either on his way to getting crossed up or he's already marked out. Because you're not supposed to be talking about prison politics on any level. There's no exception to this rule either. It's cut and dry. Which brings me to what I was thinking about the other day. And just bear with me because I want to put this in perspective so you guys understand what it is that I'm trying to say. So recently, I've noticed that there seems to be an influx of individuals that are coming onto YouTube and who all proclaim to be active. And these are individuals I don't personally know. So maybe they are, maybe they're not. Who knows? We've already seen that there's YouTubers out there who are habitual compulsive liars. But this is the thing. Let's just say for argument's sake that some of these dudes are active and that they're still in good standings with their people. I've seen a handful of these individuals myself, and they all have channels that are geared towards prison and what happens behind the walls. Now, this is just something to keep in mind because it's not far-fetched, and I guarantee you that it's more likely to happen than most people might think. I can just imagine being active and seeing what's been transpiring on YouTube over the course of the last 10 years. There's a lot of YouTubers that are all part of this so-called prison genre that are in bad standings and are considered to be no good, myself included. And as someone who lived and promoted that belief system for most of my life, I can understand both sides of it. So when you're active, there's certain things you just don't do. And if you cross those lines, you'll get yourself caught up. For example, in prison, you're forbidden from engaging with DOs on any level. They're not acknowledged, you don't trash talk with them, and you basically treat them like they don't exist. Their cells are considered to be dead cells. So just imagine coming out here active on the streets and then seeing what's been happening on YouTube. Bam Bam said it best and put it in perspective when he said, the DOs are monopolizing YouTube, etc., etc. So I could clearly understand how some of these dudes who are still active would eventually want to tap in and say something because it's discouraging. And at some point, you just want to say something and knock some of these dudes down who you believe are misleading and poisoning people. You know, I get it. And again, I understand that belief system. But here's the thing. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that there's some smart, savvy dudes that are starting to come onto YouTube who obviously know what time it is. Dudes that have been around. I've listened to a few of them myself, and when you know what to listen for, you just know. But it's a dangerous game no matter how you cut it, because even though I'm sure most of these guys know what they can say and what they can't say, or what they need to stay away from, the do's and don'ts of YouTube and prison politics, social media can still be a tricky game. Because even if you walk that line and play by all the rules, there's always still going to be the possibility of that one individual who has status and who's still behind the walls that might not like what you're saying or what you're doing. They basically just decide they want to run an agenda because maybe there's some envy or jealousy, or maybe it's because they're not the ones that are out there cutting videos and being the voice that's saying all the things that some of these other guys are saying. And you know, the mission's respectable, and taking the initiative to take a lead role and say, you know what, I'm gonna knock some of these cats down for the greater good of the people. That's also respectable. But I'm just putting this in perspective and giving people a different angle to look at this from. I'm also being the voice of reason because I've got a close homie who's also been jumping out there on YouTube, and I wouldn't want to see him get caught up either. Again, it seems like more and more guys are starting to come onto YouTube and check the temperature of the water. Maybe what we're seeing is another part of social media that's slowly evolving. That's where we're at in this day and time. Look at the interviews that have already taken place by active Mexican Mafia members to date. Daryl Baca, Night Owl from Artesia, and Mark Heroes, Turtle from Colton. Night Owl was highlighted in an interview we did for the accomplishments and for some of the barriers him and several others like him have been able to make since they've been involved with Gogi, Getting Out by Going In, a program designed to help transform the lives of inmates with a life skills and self-improvement initiative where inmates learn personal responsibility, positive thinking, and purpose. And for those of you who've seen this interview, I'm sure you'll agree that as an active member of the Mexican Mafia, Night Owl's influence within that group was clearly visible. And then when Turtle did that interview on Between the Lines, the thing that stood out to me about him opening up and talking about his upbringing is that even as an active member of the Mexican Mafia, he still openly admitted to the fact that His life took a bad turn when he started hanging out with the wrong crowd. How are you able to still be able to make a distinction like that when you're still involved in the criminal element and it's something that you're still supposed to promote? For me, it was just interesting to see that. Both of these interviews were great interviews, but hopefully these are just the beginning of many more to come. So social media is starting to break through different trends and it's becoming to be a factor where it's never been before. You know, they'll never admit it, but according to multiple people I've talked to, several of these criminal organizations behind the walls have not only been paying close attention to what's being said on YouTube, but as it looks now, they're also taking an active interest, no pun intended, in participating as well. And when it comes to putting their ears to the ground and listening to some of the propaganda that's being propagated, like everyone else, they don't just run with everything they hear. But if they catch something that they might consider to be relevant, they'll look into it, consider the source, and use it to point them in different directions. Why wouldn't they? It's a great source of information. And criminal organizations like the Mexican Mafia, the Nuestra Familia, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Black Guerrilla Family are always on the hunt for relevant information. A well-informed organization is a well-prepared organization, and this is how information is weaponized. So Maybach 992 says, been following you since you were with Loaded News Media, and I watch anything you drop. I'm sure there's probably a lot of viewers who want to ask this same question, but when are you going to start dropping more content and try being more consistent as a content creator? You know, I'm actually glad you asked this question, because even though I already posted something about it on my community page, it just gives me another platform to go back over it, and this is important. So whether some of you believe it or not, consistency is something that I've been working towards for several months now. If you're one of my longtime subscribers, then you should remember when I used to drop stories, inner demons, phone calls, war stories, interviews, profiles, book chapters, lives, premieres. I was doing it all for a minute. But this is also when Sandman used to help carry some of that weight. For a couple of years, I depended on him to knock out a lot of the editing and the technical stuff while I created the content, and this freed up a lot of my time. But when we decided to go our separate ways, I didn't have that extra help anymore. But nothing lasts forever. We had a good run, but we just got to a point to where we were in two different places. And for me, I had decided to do YouTube long term, and he had aspirations to go back to school, something that I highly encouraged. So it was just that time. I know there's a lot of you who want me to run more stories and put out more content, and trust me, I'm fully on board with it. But I've just got to find a way to cut down the time it takes me to create these long videos I've been putting out. Some of you probably have no concept when it comes to what it takes to create these videos, but it's not easy, and it's nothing you can just rush through. The editing is what's setting me back. But as I just explained to you guys in the last story I put out, I'm gonna try flipping it back to the old way I used to do my videos and see if this saves me time, where you see a split screen. On one side is the story typed up, and on the other side, you'll get the corresponding pictures that goes with the story, like you're seeing here. I know I've been saying it for a while now, but just bear with me. I'll get it figured out. You know, on the other side of it, there's been a few people who seem to think that all I do is conjure up excuse after excuse as to why it took me so long to get out another video. And what I've tried explaining to these guys is that I do YouTube to entertain some of you guys, and because I like creating content for my viewers. I don't need to do this to generate income. I do it as a secondary hobby. And it's not about coming up with excuses. To be honest about it, I don't even have to say anything. And I never feel like I have to answer for the amount of content I put out. I just let you guys know what's going on sometimes out of consideration. That's it, that's all. You know, I try to manage my time the best I can, but sometimes life really does get in the way. Lately, it's just been one thing after another. I can't catch a break for nothing. But like I said, for my diehards, just stay the course and I'll figure it out. I'm committed to putting out content for the long haul, and I'll keep doing it for as long as you guys will continue to have me. So just stay tapped in and I'll figure it out. So Caldwell63 wants to know, when is the second book coming out? When I can figure out how to make these days longer than 24 hours. No, but seriously, that's something else that's on my plate. Right now, my priority is my YouTube channel. But when I figure out how to generate more content and be consistent, then I'll start investing time back into finishing the second book. But I don't want to make any more false promises. You guys have been asking me about the time frame for finishing that book for the last couple of years now. And in 2023, I told you I'd finish it by the end of the year. Then in 2024, I told you the same thing, by the end of the year. But it didn't get done. So instead of telling you that it'll be done by the end of this year, I'll just say that it still continues to remain to be a priority for me. So hopefully I'll get all this figured out sometime in 2026. But here's a visual update. As you can see by the table of contents, I'm a little more than halfway done with it. So there you go. So T43SSYBA says, first of all, being an older gentleman myself, I commend you for getting in the ring at 55 and for just taking that fight. It seemed like all the critics came out of the woodwork and took every kind of shot they could take at you. Even other content creators who I believe still wouldn't have the balls to say it to your face. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of us when I say your credibility has never come into question. But what do you say to all those who try to question your credibility and all those who took cheap shots at you? I almost stayed away from this question because of all the drama queens out there, but I've never been one to duck questions or not speak my mind, so I'm not going to start now. First of all, the first thing I'll say is this: people took that fight way too serious, and this is something I thought about before I even got in there. Because of who I used to be and the reputation I had, I knew that if I lost, I was never going to hear the end of it, and people were going to say exactly what a lot of them said. He has no more credibility, he can't fight, he has no hands, he has to change his name, all his stories are fake, yada yada yada. And I knew that no matter what I said afterwards, people were still gonna run with it. That's just the way social media works. You're always gonna have your critics, people that are gonna slam you and run their suck muscles for whatever reason. And then you're gonna have those that are always gonna support you and take a practical approach at what they say because they just choose not to conduct themselves like some of the jackasses out there. After that event, the sentiment was almost like the big bully has been taken down, the boogeyman was finally slayed, and the monster is finally gone. But it comes with the territory. The bigger you get, the harder people want to see you fall. That's just the way it is. But what I would say to all my critics and all those who took cheap shots and all those who tried attacking my credibility, I would say you said a whole lot of nothing, and the only ones it resonated with are other people who are like-minded. It was irrelevant, all of it. You know, it got to a point to where it started to be irritating, but it was still irrelevant. You know, it got to a point to where it started to be irritating, but it was still irrelevant. And I'm just not that fragile. Even when some of these other loudmouth content creators started talking long shit and started taking shots, I knew just like they knew that they would never still say any of that to my face, and those are facts. Most of them just ain't built like that, but they use that whole fiasco to make themselves feel better. As far as my credibility, my past speaks for itself. That's all I need to say. I mean, look at what's being suggested. So you take a boxing match for YouTube entertainment with gloves during a time when I was clearly injured and had no business being in there, and that just wipes away 30 plus years of my past history. Does that even sound feasible? If people were to believe that, then I guess all the people who had come onto my channel that knew me and all the people that spoke about my past that knew me were all lying. To believe that would mean that you'd also have to believe that all those people were misled and were somehow fed some bullshit. That they all drank boxers' Kool-Aid. Why? Why would all these people agree to lie about my history? What it all comes down to is this: I think people wanted to believe that it was all bullshit. And again, a lot of it has to do with who I used to be and who I once was. If I was one of these other cats, I'd probably hate me too. I mean, that's a short statement, but if you really think about it for a minute and consider some of the people it applies to, it speaks volumes. As far as me not having no hands, yeah, people are entitled to think what they want, and they can keep thinking that if they want to. I really could give two shits about what anybody thinks. I don't have nothing to prove to anyone, and I don't feel like I have to either. And to all the comedians and all the loudmouths that said I should change my name, that I'm a boxer that has no hands, and all the other comical things that were said, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that. But trust me, that's not the reputation I have in real life situations, and it ain't never stopped me from dealing with people before in the streets, especially a loudmouth that's made the mistake of approaching me or my family on the streets. You know, the cool part about all this is that I did this for entertainment, for the viewers. And even when it was go time and I knew that I wasn't healthy enough or that I was in bad physical shape to be participating in a YouTube boxing match, I still did it for the entertainment side of it anyway. What was I supposed to do, tap out? After hyping this match up for 8 months, and then after going through all the other no-shows and the past issues with other events, there's no way I was going to cancel this fight or refuse to go forward with it. And again, what it all comes down to is people took this event way too serious. And it was almost like I wasn't supposed to say nothing about my physical shape or the injuries I had. When I spoke about my legs and my shoulder, I was either lying or I was supposed to stay quiet about it. When I addressed it, I was making excuses. My ego was crushed. Womp, womp, womp. And trust me, I spoke on some of the physical issues I was having and the injuries I had at that time. But there was a lot more going on with me health-wise, and that's something I didn't speak on, and I'll never speak on it. So just think about that for a minute. I'll close this off by saying this. I'm a street brawler. I've always been a brawler, and I've never claimed to be a professional boxer in the ring. It's a different animal. And even though my training videos prior to the fight didn't showcase no world-class boxer, I was able to at least hit the bag with enough zip to make people believe that it was going to be a good fight. But just think about this. You've got to ask yourself why I could barely even throw a punch that day. I think I might have thrown 2 or 3 punches the whole time. And it wasn't because I was getting smothered either. There was plenty of opportunities for me to throw punches back. It wasn't all that, but I couldn't. My legs were like cinder blocks and I just wasn't healthy. But even with all the issues I had going on at that time, at least I still got in there. And regardless what people might say, most people wouldn't have. Bottom line, I look bad. But again, people can think or say whatever they want. At the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. So Lady Shark 408 wants to know, Boxer, I understand prison operates under its own rules and that everything happens for a reason. But why does it always take 3 or 4 guys, sometimes more, to take out someone who's been targeted? You know, that's a good question, but like you said, prison or that whole prison underworld operates under its own set of rules. And again, everything is done for a reason. So I'm sure there's probably going to be people who might not agree with me, because despite the fact that I know it seems highly unfair, and other people will even go as far as saying that it often walks the line of what cowards do. But before I get into this, let me just say this first. Over the course of these last 2 or 3 years, there's been quite a few social media platforms that are all considered to be part of this whole prison genre. Whether it's been on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc. They've all been instrumental in showing some of the harsh realities of prison life and some of the brutalities that exist behind the walls. Hearing some of the stories is one thing, but seeing some of the graphic footage that's been surfacing lately lets people get an inside look at what really goes on inside a prison. And I'm not talking about the videos that just show the circumstances and conditions of what it's like to be locked up in that environment. I'm talking about the videos that show the stabbings and some of the homicides that have been occurring. And personally, I think it's kind of good because it acts as a deterrent and as a damper for a lot of these youngsters that still seem to think that there's something about prison that's worth glorifying, or that prison credibility is still a cool thing to have. You know, I've shown some of these videos myself on my IG, and it wasn't for the purpose of glorifying someone getting butchered to death. It was to show people the ugly reality of what really goes on behind the walls. So whether it was in my comments or viewers that commented on somebody else's channel, I read through the comments because I wanted to see how the viewers were responding to that type of content. And sure enough, there was an overwhelming amount of disdain and disparagement from people who were extremely upset and angered over seeing how some of these stabbings were carried out. You know, like you said, the majority of the time, there was a squad of 2 or 3 guys that are often referred to as shooters, who you see stabbing another guy to death. And it's always done through the element of deception, because most of the time, it's your own people who end up getting you. They'll play their way up to him, using trust as a way to disarm him, and then using the element of surprise to get him when he's not looking, they'll snake him and start hitting him. You know, when I read through the comments, people were calling some of these guys cowards, and there was a lot of animosity towards them based on seeing 2 or 3 guys victimizing another individual that was obviously a target. You know, I get how people were looking at it almost like these guys were being bullies, or that they had to rat pack someone to take them out, that they couldn't give them a fair one, and why couldn't they just go heads up? You know, I understand why people would say that, but unfortunately, that's not how it works in prison. And when something like this is happening, nobody's thinking about being fair or trying to live by those standards. You know, you gotta remember, in prison, you're dealing with gun towers, a limited time of amount to get it done, and the mentality is completely different. And I'm not advocating for these guys or trying to justify anything that they're doing. I'm just giving you guys the facts. But all they're thinking about is how they can do this as fast as they possibly can without getting shot themselves. And when it comes to stabbing someone or taking someone's life in prison, there are no rules of engagement, at least not from the perspective of being fair or morally correct. And then you've also got to remember that aside from all the things that I've already pointed out, that there's also the aspect of that whole political arena that's also involved as well. And that obviously comes with a whole array of issues in itself. You know, I've said it before, but when these types of things happen in prison, it's brutal, it's heartless, and for some people, it's even hard to watch. But regardless to how you feel about it and whether you understand it or not, I guess the best course of action anyone could ever take to avoid it or not fall victim to it yourself is to stay out of prison. So Lucy 2023 wants to know, I commend you for not involving yourself in a lot of the YouTube drama and for just being one of the few who stays in your own lane. But with that said, what's the best advice you could give someone who's thinking about creating a YouTube channel? So another great question, but the best advice I could give someone is this. Stay true to who you are and be able to stand on everything you say, because your credibility is important. And just be mindful of the fact that once you say something on social media, it then becomes to be a receipt, something that someone can later pull up and call you on. I would also say that one of the most important things you really need to ask yourself is if your skin's thick enough for social media, because if it isn't, and you can't take the criticism with the compliments and all the praise that you're going to get from different viewers, then this isn't for you. You know, when people think about starting up a YouTube channel, the majority of the time, all they're really thinking about is getting that bag, making money. And that's cool. But if you have a shady past, or there's a possibility of something coming up that you did, or something you might have been involved in, if you're not willing to look adversity straight in the eyes and address it without being deceptive or untruthful about it, then you might want to reconsider your options. Because sooner or later, it's going to come out. That's guaranteed. And when it does, you're going to either look like a liar and somebody whose credibility is now in question, or you're just going to look pretty stupid continuing to bury yourself under layer after layer of bold-faced lies. You know, unfortunately, that's one of the catch-alls about social media. If you put yourself out there in the spotlight and you become to be a so-called public personality, or like some of these other YouTubers like to call themselves, a social media celebrity, people are going to analyze you, they're going to dissect you, and they're going to want to know more about you, who you are, where you came from, your history, and why they should deem you credible, someone who they can trust. Because here's the thing, you got some idiots that seem to think that they're smarter than everyone else in the room, and that they can continue to go on in life hiding and lying about things that they've done in the past. And no matter how much proof or how many receipts that you put in their face to prove that they're lying, they'll still never admit it, and they'll continue to lie. And in the long run, this ends up hurting them more than if they would have just been honest and upfront about it from the get-go. So some of the best advice I could give is just be honest and truthful about who you are and about the things that you might have been involved in the past. Because once you put yourself out there and people start to get to know who you are, there's always going to be those that are going to hate on you for whatever reason. And if they have the ability to tear you down or throw your credibility into question, then that's what they're going to do. Bottom line, people are either going to ride with you or they're going to ride against you. They're going to make their own choices about that, but you can't go wrong by being honest. There's a lot of miserable people out there, either because they're envious, they're jealous, they're ugly human beings both inside and out, or they just have nothing to offer themselves, so they hate on the people that do. But if you take away their thunder and you confront your own demons head on by being honest about yourself, then there's nothing they can say or do to hurt you. And I guarantee you that people will respect you more for that. Most of the time, they won't even care, unless you're talking about something foul like harming kids or being a willing customer of Megan's Law. There's no amount of fixing something like that. That's an instant game changer and a career-ending revelation, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, social media, or whatever else you try to involve yourself in. Some other good advice I would give is to also stay away from getting caught up in the drama. It's an absolute proven fact that drama sells, and that this is actually a tactic to grow your channel and invite traffic. But you have to ask yourself what's more important: maintaining the integrity of your channel and thinking about long-term growth, or not caring about these things and going in with the crash out mentality to just make money however you can get it. I'd also stay away from doing reactions on other YouTubers. This is just an open-ended invitation to invite back and forth drama. To each his own. I personally don't do them. Because I mean, what do you think's gonna happen when you pass judgment about what another YouTuber's doing, or when you offer up a negative opinion about them? He's gonna clap back, and that's the type of negativity that you want to stay away from. Some other good advice I'd also give is to not be one of them jackasses who drinks on his channel and who ends up being a crash dummy who says and does a bunch of dumb shit. Or if you are gonna drink, at least be someone who can hold your liquor and maintain your composure. Don't be like one of those raving, slurring idiots who starts talking like they got a mouthful of croutons after only drinking one small can of Bud Light. And lastly, I'd say go into creating a channel with a solid plan. Know what you want to talk about and aim to put out quality content. There's a lot of content creators that don't put any effort into creating their craft. They simply stand in front of a camera and bump their gums about whatever they consider to be exclusive, groundbreaking news. They don't go that extra mile and put any emphasis on the things that would make their videos stand out. Like they say, the quality's in the details. For example, I know my channel's far from being on the level that some of these other channels are on, but at least I'm always working and trying to get better. Whether it's creating thumbnails, which is kind of like your curb appeal for those potential viewers who are always scrolling, or the intros or outros, taking the time to incorporate pictures or videos. That in itself takes a lot of work, because if you don't already have them, you've got to Google the corresponding pictures, crop them, then take each picture one at a time and place them on the timeline with the transitions, putting in background music, and then, like I said, putting in the transitions between the pictures. Trust me, all these different steps are time consuming and it takes a lot of work to do it, but the quality and the effort will show in your videos. So Crypto13 wants to know, Boxer, what's up with Lencho these days? You know, it's funny that you asked, because I just so happen to have an update. So according to someone who reached out to me that was with Lencho in Vacaville, he's actually due to come home sometime late next year. I guess he was brought back on appeal and resentenced, so that's the latest as far as his legal issues. And I know there might be some people who might be surprised by me saying this, but I'm glad things worked out for him and that he's getting back out. You know, regardless to what people might think, I'd rather not see anybody locked up. But unfortunately, under the circumstances, that was the way that the cookie crumbled for him. You know, don't get me wrong, I still can't stand the dude. But having done a lot of time myself, I just know that that ain't no way for anybody to live out the final days of their existence. And trip on this, despite the fact that he's on an SNY in Vacaville, he still seems to think in some crazy way that he's still active. Let's see if he attends the regimental meeting in San Jose when he touches down late next year. But wait, there's more, and it gets better. As far as what Lencho's been doing, just take a wild guess. For those of you who done time back in the 80s, what was Vacaville known for back then? Trannies and he-she's walking around the track with man boobs. I guess some things just don't change because apparently Lencho has a girlfriend. You just can't make some of this stuff up. I know some of you won't believe me because of our differences, but I'm gonna give you the receipts. So according to my source, his girlfriend named Sylvia Booths was actually a tranny porn star. And from what my source said, once you got yours, Sylvia wanted to get his, so there you have it. Anyways, in closing, here's a few pictures along with a short video of Lencho.
Hey, how's that 2 times spicy, old motherfucker? Here. Going through it.
Anyways, you guys, this was just a quick Q&A to give you guys an example of how I used to do them. I used to do these all the time, and I want to bring them back, so I need you guys to tell me what you think. Also, give me your thoughts on this format. The editing is a lot more complicated and time consuming when I'm in the video instead of this typed up narrative in the pictures. But the purpose is to create more content and to manage my time better, so it's a possible win-win all the way around. I'll try to keep the bigger stories and the inner demons in the same format, so again, give me your thoughts on this and tell me what you guys think. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this Q&A. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. And again, something else that's extremely important that I'm going to continue to keep reminding you guys about is to not only hit the like, drop a comment, and share the video, but also hit the all symbol on the notification bell so you're advised whenever I drop any content on this channel. So with that being said, as always, I just want to thank those of you who continue to show your unwavering support and for also continuing to tap into the channel. In the meantime, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Keep pushing that positivity. Until the next one, this is your boy B, and I'm gone.